bit of backstory. I grew up in a rural part of Ireland, with only two neighbors. I lived on my great-grandparents' old small farm, and had renovated the old barn into a garage, for my dad to work out as a mechanic. My closest neighbor was my dad's aunt-in-law, who never really bothered us. But our other neighbor, we'll let them use our lane as an easy access point to their house, and farm even though their own land, going down to theirs was much shorter method but a tight road for a milk tanker and silage harvester. I had a large extended family, 14 or so cousins, who were always at my house hanging out. Two of my cousins who I was really close with, let's call the older one Mike and the younger one Jim, befriended the neighbor's middle child, let's call him George, as his family was always looking up my dad to fix something, and George was always tagging along. We had so much fun together as kids, but everything got much weirder as we grew up. George was about 14 when this started to happen. One day when I was about 16 years of age, the neighbors needed their Jeep fixed, and when George was dropping it off for his dad, he'd realized that my parents weren't home, and noticed the back door was unlocked. So instead of knocking and calling our names, he walked into the house, and up the stairs to my bedroom where I was sleeping, opened the door and just stared at me, and said my name very quietly. I woke up confused as to what was going on. My family were loud and rambunctious, so someone quietly saying my name was definitely not normal. I asked what the fuck he was doing here, and his excuse was, no one was downstairs, and I heard the voices upstairs. The voices was me playing TV as I fell asleep. I passed it off as it was nothing, and just got him out of the house ASAP. Thankfully I was dressed, so I wasn't freaking out about him seeing me. When he left, I went down to my sister's room on the bottom floor, and asked her if she had heard George knock or come in. She was sitting there doing schoolwork, and didn't hear a sound. Just the Jeep that was driving up, which was normal for my dad's family to use the garage. They all had keys to it, which was where the family machinery was kept when not needed, so she thought nothing of it. Another incident involving George was when my cousins Mike and Jim had invited him to hang out with us and play some video games. Everything was fine that day until later in the evening when Mike went to the bathroom, and 2 minutes later George disappeared after him. Not long after, Mike came back, and I had asked if he had seen George. He hadn't. Then I heard floorboards creak from my bedroom, as no one else was upstairs, so I was confused and went up to see when I found George in my closet, snooping through my stuff. I grabbed him by the collar and pulled him out of my room. I was furious as no one was allowed in my room. I was a 17-year-old, 5'0" noodle of a girl that had Asperger's syndrome and a bad mental health record. So, to me, my room was my sanctuary. His excuse again was, I was looking for Mike and I thought he was up in here. I was at this point screaming at him to never come near me or my room again, and about how creepy this all was. All the while he kept laughing like it was a joke, and for me it wasn't. He was refusing to leave, so I did the only dumb thing my brain could think of, and was to put him on his ass and drag him out myself. But whatever way I swiped his feet, he fell onto his ass and slid down the stairs, which, as this boy was at least 6 feet tall and weighed twice as much as me, astounded my cousins' parents, who all came running to the bottom of the stairs and found him on his ass starting to cry. My family were extremely confused, but stayed calm and asked us both what happened. Surprisingly, he told them what he had told me, and never made me out to be the bad guy. When I came downstairs about 5 minutes later, after a small cry, my family asked me to recall the events, and never punished me, but asked George to never come to the house again, without my dad's knowledge. And if he does, we will not let them use our lane anymore, as legally they had no right to use it. George never stepped foot into our house again, but would always speed down our road in anything he has on, whether it was tractor or Jeep, etc. He even ran over a dog in his quad, ATV for those Americans. I had a lot younger family members over all the time. We did think about putting up a gate, but the road has a huge street that was too wide, unless we cement a post into the middle of the road. But he didn't care. He would purposely drive the tractor past our lane at 2 to 3 a.m., turning at the top of our lane. Instead, we put a cattle guard at the point where the lanes meet their land. That made no difference, so my dad now has to park a vehicle, which is nearly always his transit van, in the middle, so they purposely have to slow down to get around it. This all happened 4 years ago, and I've barely seen him since. But I've moved on and into my own place with my boyfriend, who happened to go to school with George. My boyfriend was a few years older than George, and was the same age in the same class as my boyfriend's younger brother. I had heard that from them when George was 17. He was FaceTiming an 8-year-old girl, and was touching himself while talking to her. The young girl's mother walks in and sees what he's doing, and files a police report. Put it on Facebook, photos of the interaction they had and all. He is now, from what I heard, on probation, and has an ankle tag. What a creep. Let's never meet again. I legit never thought to post this until I read about another bus driver. When I was in the 5th grade, my sisters and I rode the bus to and from school. Our driver was a bit weird and mean, but nothing unusual for a school bus driver. One day we get on the bus and all the pre-K and kindergarten kids are chanting, "Take us home," and are being led in this chant by the bus driver. We end up getting onto the one stretch of the road that almost no cars use, and the bus driver decides he's done with the chant. He turns and yells that if we don't shut up, he'll turn the bus and leave us there to sweat to death like dogs. This was in South Texas, and was around 90 degrees outside. He turns off the bus, gets off, and locks the door. We're all reasonably freaked out. None of us have phones, and we're locked in a bus. After about 10 minutes, he got back on and continued the route. All of our parents called the cops, but he only got transferred to a different bus. He still works for that school, so bus driver who threatened to kill us. Let's not meet. So back when I was in my 3rd year of secondary school, I was about 13 or 14. I had drama class with 3 of my close friends, who I will call Kaylee, Dave, and Ronald. And we ironically were doing Blood Brothers. And our teacher had graciously given us time to talk to each other since we were very quick workers. But I was a very focused and perfectionist kind of person. So, of course, we started to talk about what kind of things we watched on YouTube. I explained that I was really interested in Lance Stewart's Possessed Roommate series. My other friends said that they were watching Jacob Sartorius, their favorite songs, and football soccer games. And this is how I began to engross in Ouija boards and the paranormal world. I went to the next class, which happened to be the class with 2 of my closest friends, who I will call Kami and Natalie. And yes, this wasn't closely involved with my paranormal story. In class, we were studying the musical Sunshine on the Leith, and then break came around and I met up with my other friends, Ellie. This was her real name, and I don't feel like I need to hide her name. And my other friend, Shannon, Piper, and Christine. And I was talking to Ellie, Kaylee, and Shannon about the whole Possessed Roommate videos by Lance. And then Ellie, who ever since she was about 5 or 6 could see ghosts of her lost family members, or black figures of demons, said, "You know there's some old guy watching you from behind, right?" And the weird thing was, we were in school, and there was a fencing surrounding the ground of the school. So I turned to look, and I don't see anything. And I asked her what guy. He was tall, overweight. He had stubble and short gray hair, was what she responded with. I could picture the man, but something was off. It was like she was describing my granddad, who had passed back when I was 11. I would like to think I was the closest grandchild to him, in comparison to my younger sisters, so I asked what he was wearing. "I don't know, he's not there anymore," which was very ironic because in current times I would admit I'm not friends with her anymore due to a holiday fallout. So I do as I always do and brush it off, as if she made it up. Then Shannon tells me something that scared me. I knew Shannon would never lie to me, I saw him too. Old guy clothes, like in general idea of an old guy clothing. Plus, he was blue, like he had stopped breathing. While she told me what he was wearing, over to Kaylee and her friends, Piper, Christine, and Eileen. I'm not too close with Eileen, which is also her real name, and I've also tried to hide the complete truth about other weird things before, so I felt like I didn't need to hide this. And Jesse and Shannon mentioning this, I had to stop and try to calm down. This obviously caught my other friends' attention, and they started to ask me what was wrong. Why was I panicking? I had never told them about my deceased granddad, who died from heart and lung failure. I had never told them about my granddad, and we decided because both Ellie and Shannon had seen the man, we would make an Ouija board. I know sometimes that a makeshift Ouija board doesn't work, but apparently if a Christian starts a session, it does, or something. Being a skeptic that I was at the time, every time that our planchette would move, I would ask everyone in turn if they swore down on their lives that they weren't moving it. And this is where I began to believe in the paranormal. Everyone swore down that they weren't moving it, and there was about 8 of us playing the Ouija board. So the session started by Piper greeting the spirits, and we asked the basic questions like, are you good or bad spirit? It spelled good. What's your name? And it slowly spelled out Andrew, and I felt like crying. No one knew what my granddad's name was, only me. How old are you? It went to the numbers 6 and 8, making 68, which wasn't as old as my granddad was. He was at least 61 because my gran was only 59, and there was at least 2 or 3 years between them. So I then became weary of the fact that this might not be my granddad. Do you know anyone here? It moved to yes. Who? We had added everyone's initials around the board near the edges, but not too far to let the spirit out. With that in mind, where it moved scared me. It quickly moved to my initials, KSD. Eternally, I was freaking out. How do you know me? I asked. It didn't move. Are you related? Someone asked. It moved hesitantly to yes. I had enough and snapped. Okay, Andrew, how are we related? It finally spelt out granddad, which is what to me and my sister called my granddad. Are you sure you're my granddad? I asked suspiciously. It went to no. Who are you really? It started to bounce around between Z and 0 repeatedly, making Zozo. Kaylee flipped out and said that we needed to say goodbye, so we forcefully moved the planchette to goodbye, leaving the now identified demon alone. My friends agreed that we'd meet up on the weekend to go around the school grounds and play with the Ouija board some more. But every day at lunch, we hung out and talked about the demon who pretended to be my granddad. Kaylee even went to the extent of reading the rules of the Ouija board. She even read the story of Zozo and his brother demon Mama, and if either one of them makes themselves known, the session. We met up at the school. There obviously were cameras watching almost every square inch of the ground, and we didn't care. We found the place that we'd be playing at first. We agreed that we would go for a session there, and then go to the shop for some snacks whilst us played and some of us observed. Or, in Piper's case, do some sketching, and Kaylee was making some Max and Harvey edits on her phone. It started the same as we did with my granddad saying hello, and yes, it was a good spirit, and I knew it was someone. Who is it that you know, and use their initials at the sides. It moved to EW, and then quickly went to SR, meaning that it knew Ellie and Shannon. Ellie was there with Kaylee reading out the rules, so she knew not to give away of scaring you or making you weaker. But of course, Ellie didn't care about that, and asked, "Are you Amy?" Moved slowly to yes. "Are you angry with me?" Stayed on yes. "I'm sorry, Amy. I don't know that there was going to be a bus when it happened. You shouldn't have started pushing Shannon." Ellie apologized before snapping at the spirit. "Amy, can you point my finger to where you are?" I asked it. "Yes," and slowly the planchette turned to point my finger at Ellie. Shannon said we needed to end the session, but Ellie refused to do that. "Amy, can I leave the board?" I asked. "Yes, goodbye, Amy." It moved to goodbye. I removed my finger from the planchette, so I watched as Ellie and Shannon played some more, and then we ended the game. So walking to the shops, I asked Shannon and Ellie what they meant by the whole Amy thing, and basically she explained this. When me and Ellie were in nursery, we became friends with a girl called Amy, and she was really nice. Then one day she changed by the time we were in the P3, and they were about 6 or 7, P3 meaning primary 3 in primary school, and Amy started to push me. I told her to stop because it wasn't funny anymore, but she didn't stop, so Ellie stepped in and pushed Amy back. Ellie pushed her too hard because Amy stumbled onto the road and was hit by a double-decker bus and was killed. We never told anyone because we didn't want to get in trouble. It all made sense to me. Ellie had anger problems because she had murdered someone in her early years. Then, as the days went by, we decided to hang out at school as me and Ellie were walking from our Promoting Resilient Learners class and to the lunch hall. Ellie had noticed something out the window. There's a girl hanging out onto the gutter above the small gym yard halls. She was wearing a white dress, has long brown hair, and is covered in something red. She had explained this to me. The next part was so casual it was unsettling. Probably blood. I grabbed her arm and told her that we needed to go get food because I was starving, and that because I was a very fussy eater. There was usually not anything good to eat by the time I got to the front of the queue. So we rushed to get food, and then Ellie asked if I wanted to go to the shop to get some Pepsi. I agreed on the account that she was paying. She smiled and said of course. We got to the shop and Ellie knew exactly where the blind spots were from the cameras, so she grabbed some snacks and about 6 bottles of fizzy drinks. To be exact, 3 bottles of Coca-Cola for me and 3 bottles of Pepsi for Max herself. She went to the blind spot and stood in front of where the only cameras could see her because I didn't know what she was going to do. Ellie had stated that she needed to go back to get her purse because she obviously needed money. But that was only until the lady who worked at the shop, who was filling the shelves up, went to work the cashier. Before I knew it, Ellie had stuffed everything into her bag and put only things she could get into her bag back onto the shelf as we walked out. I went back to the school and met Eileen and Piper, who told us in panic that they had saw a black silhouette of a man with a top hat and a cane standing at the end of their bed. This freaked me out because the same night as them, I had a dream that I was learning how to ride a bike with my granddad, and suddenly he wasn't there anymore, and I woke up and checked my phone. It was 3:33 a.m. to see towering over the foot of my bed the same silhouette of a man, and the only thing he had was glowing red eyes. So I told them that, and just as I finished, Jesse, Shannon, and Kaylee ran over and said that they had seen a silhouette too. Kaylee then said that after I told her about the eyes, that the silhouette is probably after you. I freaked out and asked her why. She shrugged, and then we decided to try out one last time with the Ouija board to see if Zozo could tell us what the silhouette means. Hello, we're here to talk to any spirit that wants to communicate with us. We all have some questions to ask about a dream, and we hope you can answer as truthfully as you can. We mean you no harm, and hope that no harm will come to us. Boy, was that our biggest mistake. Almost immediately it moved to spell out the word hello. What's your name? It spells out Andrew. In my head I was thinking, not this again. Hi, Granddad. I boarded, either from not knowing if it was him or Zozo posing as him. We all have this vision of a silhouette of a man wearing a top hat and holding a cane, standing at the end of our footbeds last night. Could you explain that to us? It moved to yes. Okay, we're going to put on a voice recording memo. Can you explain it to Kaylee's phone for us? It stayed on yes. Kaylee started to record. Alright, explain it for us. It moved to my initials, KD. What is it? It spelled out, you're next. What do you mean? It spelled out red eyes before pausing and then moving to Amy. What about Amy? It spelled out jealous. Is Amy jealous of Caitlin? It went to yes. Why? It spelled out friends before spelling with and moving to EW and SR. So what? I'm friends with Ellie and Shannon. Amy had died suddenly, and I hadn't even met them yet. It moved to goodbye, so we left after that. Later on, I set for Kaylee to phone me at 8 to make sure I was still alive. I had never been so thankful for Kaylee and Shannon to be my friends, and make sure that nothing happened to me. Ellie turned out to be faking everything, but she swore down that she never faked anything to do with the Ouija board. Okay, so it's been surreal that this happened to me at 21. I was a stripper. It became that way due to losing my place 4 different times in a single month. June of 2014, I was dancing at a strip club in Fort Worth, Texas, and living out of a Saturn that wasn't even mine. My mom wanted to help me out and let me the car. I still own it. After all this time, hard to let it go after living in it. I had worked at this club, North Cabaret, for a few months. Nothing happened out of the ordinary, other than prostitution in the VIP section. I never went up there for obvious reasons of creepy guys. Little did I know that the creepy ones I had to worry about was the manager there. Our club owner, we'll call him Steve, was the creepiest out of them all. I drank plenty in order to be capable of dancing, just because I wasn't super proud of the hole I fell into. Fireball was my drink of choice, just because it warmed me up while I was half naked getting ready to go on stage. While I say half naked, I mean just bra and skimpy outfit, mostly scarf, half wrapped on a G-string. Of course, I lost it while on stage along with a bra. I had no problems with the DJ, or the house mom, and the tips we owed at the end of the night. Hell, if they did a good enough job with the music or watching my stuff, I tipped them extra. I'm always super nice, just how I am, and they loved me. The night everything turned south, they knew something was up. I still haven't been mean, other than this night, and one other. The other night was 4 years later. Let me inform you, being a stripper is dangerous, due to guys always wanting that fantasy without consequence, so therefore drugging us is not uncommon. Actually, even after being a stripper, our paranoia still sticks with us, due to ensuing our safety always. I fucked up one single night, and that's all it took for me to almost lose my livelihood, completely. I got comfortable, and that's all it takes, is letting your defense down. I didn't watch the bartender make the drink, and didn't pay attention to the waitress bringing the drink to the table. I still regret it. Steve, I found out way later, drugged me with Rufalin. One of my favorite waitresses that I actually boxed, Foxy Boxing, served me 2 drinks after the effects began to take place, and she realized something was wrong, and wrote it off as me being too drunk. I didn't even have 3 drinks, when in reality I have at least 10 shots of Patron before I'm really drunk. I had a huge tolerance to alcohol back then. After she served me those 2 shots, I found out that she had told me that I needed to go home, and I told her to fuck off, and that she didn't know what she was talking about. Now, if you don't know how strip clubs work, us as the dancers, we rent the building by paying a fee to the dance so we can call the shots. I don't know, I guess afterwards I went to the changing room and freaked out on the house mom. The DJ came back there and tried calming me down, and I freaked on him as well. They knew something was up, and they had to let me know the next day I worked. I walked out the back door, which no one is allowed to go out that way considering it was dangerous. I walked through one of the semi-yards, when one of my ex-taxi drivers found me and gave me a ride to another bar, one I frequented often, and dropped me off free of charge. I knew the bartender prior, because I hung out there, and karaoke'd often there. I needed a ride, so he took me to his house since I was hitting on him. Hardcore and a massive breakdown to him about my past. He gave me a ride to the place I was staying at. I sat with the people I stayed with and watched Bleach, and deleted those episodes I watched. Super mad, and I went to bed. I woke up the next morning not sure how I got home, or what had transpired that night, before 8 p.m. I got home around 2 a.m. and asked my roommates how I got home. They said someone dropped me off and I watched Bleach. When I went through my phone, I found a lot of messages between me and my ex, about me being fucked up and needing help. I don't remember any of this. I found pictures of me on the roof of the strip club. I actually still have those pictures of me being on the roof, through the service ladder. He told me that I called him stating that I was fucked up and needed a ride and couldn't drive. I had short shorts on and a spaghetti strap tank top on while walking through the semi-yard of Fort Worth. I had a flower in my hair, and I'm not a fan of flowers, especially dandelions, which I had behind my ear. I was talking all sorts of nonsense and requested to be dropped off at the bar that the bartender worked at in Crowley. I talked to the bartender and he knew something was weird because I was crying. I don't cry very often about my past or past choices. Fast forward to about 6 months. I had moved to Nebraska with a middle school friend that needed a friend, and I had to get out of that life. One of the regular customers at the club I worked at called me. Come to find out, he was drugged as well. Beaten to an inch of his life. Had to have 2 surgeries in 3 days on his knee. Since my ex-boss Steve and his lackeys thought he was valuable, at the time I didn't know that my instincts were spot on, even all drugged up. I also found out that the waitresses disappearing weren't because they were quitting, but because they were being drugged and taken. I got out through the back door and got a ride through an outside source. That's what saved me. North Cabaret no longer exists under the name or owner, but my ex-manager, I know what you look like, and you better pray we never meet again. Also, the only reason I know for certain that nothing happened to me between the club and home was because I didn't have any feminine products at the club, or at the house because I was going to stop at the store to get some the next day, and I still had the same one in the next day, so I had some sort of comfort or closure to ease my fears. Needless to say, I got luckier than most. Hey guys, I want to thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, please consider clicking that subscribe button and bell icon to get notified of all future videos. I try to post around 5 times a week, and if you have a story of your own you would like to feature on the channel, head over to my subreddit r/GensenOfficial. And if you want early access to my videos, head over to my Patreon, where only $1 a month gets you that and some other fun perks. I've also got some merch now over on Spreadshirt. I as well offer all my videos and my podcasts that can be found on all major podcast services. All links will be located in the description field. Hope everyone's having a good night, and remember, keep it spooky.